Hey everyone, this is John Joseph again from the East Center. Good to see you all today. I'm with Yogi Dewar from 609 Social. Yogi, how you doing today?
I'm doing all right. Glad to be here with you.
Yeah, glad to be here.
I'm glad to have you here.
Thank you. I'm glad to be here, and thank you for getting this new space inside of 609
It's
open.
pretty special, I think.
Yeah, this is the new part of 609.
The new part.
That's right. So glad to have you, and thank you again for just being here. I wanted to start and just ask you to tell us a little bit about your background, where you've come from, and how you've made your way here to Decatur and Morgan County.
We've lived in Nashville the last, I don't know, 35 years, I guess. And that was a combination of starting and running and selling several businesses, doing a lot of real estate work, and also commercial real estate banking work. And so I've got an unusual background in that I've been on the lending side of the equation, but I've had to be with real estate, you're on the borrowing side of the equation quite often. And that has helped each other out because I was a better banker because I was a good borrower and vice versa, But I retired from all that some years ago and just focused on day in and day out real estate and development. We got down here. Well, Nashville, as you may have heard, is growing and a lot. And it's really to the point where it's just the really big players are in there and they've run the prices up so much it's harder, a lot harder for what we do. We still have several projects up in Nashville working and they are huge and we have to bring in other players. It takes a lot longer and all that. But, for your run-of-the-mill base hit kind of deals that I like to do, we were talking about where else could we go. My partner, Steve Armistead, is from here and went to high school here, knows everybody. And he was coming down quite a bit, reuniting with some of his old high school buddies, and they're all in charge of things nowadays, as we got older. And it kept coming up, why don't we bring what we've learned in Nashville down here? He brought it up to me one day, and I started doing the data and the research like I like to do, and we were quick to realize that Huntsville mimicked Nashville only, I don't know, say behind 10 years in their growth patterns of the two cities, which also meant that Brentwood and Madison were a lot alike, which also meant that Franklin, Tennessee and Decatur, Alabama were a lot alike because they were about the same distance away from the hub of the activity. And the growth was spreading in this direction. And when we looked at that, and we looked at the job growth, anticipated job growth from the data that was out there, it's like, wow, this is really good for the area. And then coming here and talking to some of the business leaders and so on, also realizing that while I think everybody sort of knew that this might be happening, nobody knew quite what to do about it. And therefore they were asking Steve, why don't you come down here and try some stuff? So we did.
Okay, so let me unpack that a little bit. I imagine the fact that we're also closer to Nashville made us more appealing for you and to you than places 10 hours away. You probably don't want to go there. But what about relative to other places you could have gone that are within a reasonable drive? I mean, you could be outside of Atlanta, you could be outside of Birmingham, you could be outside of a lot of other places. So were there other factors that drove you to North Alabama and then to Decatur specifically?
Proximity. Because we could shoot down here and back in a day, and you're tired at the end of the day, but it's completely doable, and there's nothing like an hour and a half windshield time to catch up on phone calls and so on. Makes the trip go fast. Yeah. But I have a foot in Chattanooga, for instance, and we did look at some things down there, but I think what we felt here is that there wasn't anybody really looking at doing what we were doing. That the prices that we could, get into the game with really made it appealing, and that we knew a lot of people. And honestly, I love this town. Everybody was happy that we were here and supportive and so on. And there's a lot to be said for that versus starting from scratch in another town. I quickly got to know many people, but Steve, of course, knew them because he grew up with them, or so many of them. So that really. That probably tipped the scale, I guess.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's helpful.
But when I have said this to my investors, it's how they became investors, many of them from Nashville, that if you were to go to downtown Franklin and look around and say, if you knew 20 years ago what you know now about downtown Franklin, what would you do? And inevitably it's, well, I'd invest in it, I'd buy stuff and I'd do it with a vengeance. And as well, that's kind of what we're talking about here, because the same dynamics are at play. There is a job growth that is really unprecedented for the area here. Decatur, like Chattanooga, it's a river town, and so it was built out way before a lot of other towns were, and so we're in a building that's 125 years old, and there's a lot of them here, so the neighborhoods around us that were built out, they've also been established here. So when people say, well, it's going to grow, how? Where are you going to put things? And that came up. Now, being from Nashville, we'll build on a postage stamp. There's a 30-story building going up downtown that, you can barely find, you couldn't park there and turn your car around to leave. It's a tiny little triangle. Yeah, we'll build on anything.
Just go vertical.
So seeing that, from a different lens when we got here, we were able to say, well, hold on a minute, maybe we could try this or that. And so that was our first step, was just to start accumulating the properties.
Okay, and then talk a little bit about the story of 609 Social. And just before we started, you were saying a little bit about how your experience with 609 Social has helped you think about some of the different perceptions of this place, some of the different things people say. Would you talk a little bit about the founding of the restaurant specifically, and also just other opportunities generally that you're looking at or thinking about?
Yeah, there's a lot in that question.
There is a lot in that question.
How we came to it, honestly, there was an auction one day. I wasn't aware of it. Brian Cook was driving by and he called and said, you ought to go to that auction tomorrow. So neither of us were in town, but we had a friend come in and we bid and we bought that building. Honestly, I didn't even know what it looked like, but I knew that with the square footage that they told me about and the price, it made sense, no matter what. We had built townhomes, or we're starting on townhomes across the street. The overwhelming question asked of us were to bring housing into the downtown area. And of course it's historic over there, so I had to work with historic to make sure it checked all the boxes, which was a process. Learned a lot there, but it did. But we got to think, okay, we've got this building, what are we going to do with it? And a lot of questions came up about having a market here. In fact, Star Market out of Huntsville, wouldn't it be great if they were here? So I got in touch with those guys. We had dinner and we talked quite a bit about it. It wasn't a good fit in the end, but really got us thinking about what we could do here. And then as I accumulated and rezoned more land in the area here, it's like, there's going to be a lot of people here, and it needs some place where somebody can go and buy dog food or a bottle of wine, and without getting in the car and having to travel a pretty good ways, really. So that was the impetus of it. I, through a friend, got hooked up with Michael Lucasio, who was from Alabama, but he had been really all over the world in restaurants and grew up in 3 generations in food markets. In fact, the murals that we have on our walls, that's actual photographs of his grandparents or great-grandparents. So, and there they are in their market, in a little cigar case. Michael coming in and discussing it back and forth, we were landing on a concept that we had seen work so well in the Northeast and the Northwest. And I have people in both places, and I go visit quite a bit, and you will often find a restaurant market kind of combination, and you can buy what it is that you're having for lunch and take it home with you if you wanted to and prepare it yourself. So we started working on that concept and what we could do with it, and exploring what we had to take advantage of. And one of those was Captain Pat. I'm sure everybody knows he's a great guy, but he's forgotten more than most people know about fish. He just is tied into that world so tightly, and those connections enable us to get product quickly and less expensively than I guess anybody else would. I mean, we're blessed to have them. As a result, we're wholesaling now to other restaurants, fish and meat, because we can, you know, and it helps them out and helps us out. So, but looking at the overall picture of what we wanted Bank Street to be, and this is, for anything I say, it's about how to make Bank Street how to plug it in, really get it kicking. And for me, I thought, if we're gonna have these people living on the street, we need a key center point, a gathering spot, a place that you can just run in and grab stuff and so on. And, or if you wanted to go meet 3 friends after work, that does that too. And where we came up with the social, with the help of the Macon group, it hit. You know, we're not a supermarket, we're a social market. It made a lot of sense to me because I really wanted a place that people could just get together, have meetings. I mean, we have meetings all the time during the week in the morning, various vendors and businesses who just get together and have a quick meeting before, you know, they go in and open up the shop at 9 o'clock or something like that. That's exactly what we wanted. Or to have it on a Friday night where people aren't leaving because they're running into friends and they're having conversations, and tomorrow's Saturday, so enjoy it, you know. But I feel like we have achieved that pretty well. So far, so good, and I'm very grateful of the support that we've got for the place.
It's good to hear that.
Yeah. In fact, it's worked well enough that we had to get this space that we're in now, which is next door, and it's called the Annex. And the idea here is that we get a lot of requests for special events. So we've got a smaller room, we fit up to maybe 20 people in there. And that's good for a little birthday party or graduation party, what have you. But to have a bigger setting, a bigger birthday or you know, rehearsal dinner or what have you, we needed something like this to do the trick. And we're actively working on a spot that would be the next step from this. So if this will hold up to say 50 people and over there is 20 people, well, what do you do from 50 to 100 and a quarter or something like that? And that's our next frontier, I guess. We have such an enormous kitchen back there. In our marketing, in our business plan, it wasn't just a one-shot thing where we're going to be a restaurant or a market. We're going to be both. And so we have a restaurant, we have a fish market. We buy our fish from our own market. There's a transaction that happens, and you'll see them walking back and forth across the restaurant with fresh fish. But we also want to sell that out. And we also want to have our shelves full of cool stuff, and we're working on a couple major things here that'd be pretty neat. But the biggest thing for us is we built a big enough kitchen that we could not only supply our restaurant, but we could do a lot of other work too. So that would come in the form of catering. And so if we find some other spots in town where people want to have events or event space, you know, we can do it all day long for you and just crank it right out because we've got the room to do it. I don't know if you've ever seen that hood, but it's serious business back there, and it wasn't cheap, but it does its trick.
Yeah. Well, let me ask you this, and I appreciate this conversation. It's fun to hear where you came from, why you've chosen to be here, and what you've done and what you're doing. I told you before we started that part of the purpose here is just to encourage entrepreneurs and entrepreneurship and share cool and interesting stories about things that are happening on the ground here in Decatur, here in Morgan County. So as we're wrapping up, just to give some people things to work with and go on, would you mind speaking to 2 or 3 principles or lessons that just guide your business life, guide your approach to being an entrepreneur? Just what's proven valuable to you?
You know, that people talk about having right brain, left brain, and you know, you're either analytical but you can't convey that, or the other way around, or something like that. I could talk, but I had to go and really focus on how to understand the analytics of a business so that I understood what was going on, and then I could communicate it. And that personally has helped me quite a bit. When I got into commercial banking, you know, I didn't have that background, and it didn't come naturally. I had to just learn it, you know, and sometimes that uncomfortable part is the key, because I've always said if you could have an analytic brain or understand that and the ability to convey it, that's dangerous. You don't get those 2 sides of the brain in one brain all the time, and that I'm not saying I've mastered it, but it sure, as I learned that other side of my brain, it sure did help me out quite a bit. You know, we often have to get we have to talk to banks for our project, but we also have to talk to investors, and they need to understand what it is you're trying to do, but they also need to understand what's the math behind it. And fortunately, I think my brain works like a math equation. I've got to fill in the blanks in order to have a equals what. That kind of works for me. I think in our overall sense, what Steve and I and my other partners have talked about is what kind of a market do we have and how are we going to be received? And as you alluded to with the 609, there's a lot of lessons learned in the 609 social as somebody who's in there and talking to people a lot, because it was, we were told that, that kind of thing wouldn't be supported, that there weren't people here to support it. And what does that mean? Well, it means people who have good enough jobs that they have enough disposable income that they would go support something like that. They might like to, but could they? But that's not what our data showed us. I'm not saying everybody is rolling, but there is disposable income. You may have a blue-collar job, but it's a pretty good job. We had some good, if you work for General Electric, it's probably not a bad gig, So we felt like there was more of a market for us here for some of the things that we were doing than maybe people who lived here all their lives thought. And I totally understand why either side of that could happen. That's what we have to do, is to analyze that. But it looks like we were right. When we built the townhouses, we had immediate response on that. Interest rates hurt us, but not the desire to live there. Sure. And so now that's going well. We'll wrap that up here probably the next 3 months, I guess. So the market is doing well. We've had to expand it. We're expanding out the back next week, and that's been good. So it does show that there are people, if you can give it what they want to have, there is money or desire to spend some of that money with you, and especially if it's, this is fun. Having a place like this it's a fun place to go, I hope, and if you can get that for people, you're halfway there, I suppose.
Yes, you are.
For the very greater sense, look, there are people moving here, this is all about entrepreneurs. If there are people moving here and to the area, North Alabama is swelling up, and all of these companies up and down our river, and if you look at what they're looking for the next 24 months in job growth, it's substantial. This town's really going to grow. We have to find a place to put these people, or they're going to live all around us, and that's not the idea. But we also need to make it as easy as possible for somebody who wants to not work at the factory, but wants to open up a bakery or a coffee shop or something, to be able to go do it, or any version of that. If they are willing to invest their time and money in town, we need to welcome that and fast track it as best we can and get them going as quickly as possible. When's the best time to get going on a good idea? Immediately.
Yesterday.
So we need to do that. I'm proud of what I think, we took a bit of a gamble on Bank Street. On the other hand, looking at what's happening now, it's fascinating to see that it's happening, and you don't always see it right away because it takes so much planning and work with the city and Decatur Utilities and all these things to get your project off the ground, and it takes quite a while. But I know that it's happening, and I know the people that are doing it, and that's really encouraging to me. And I look at the future of Decatur from the entrepreneurialism point of view, and the places that have been here, probably been here a long time, we're going to have population growth. That means two things. There's new people to serve, and there are businesses that are going to age out. And so I think for somebody looking at starting something here, I don't know when it could be better. It really checks the boxes when I look at it from that perspective. So we'll see if people agree.
That's very good. Well, I think they do, and thank you for what you've been doing here. Thank you for just being part of that story for Bank and for the community. And just know it means a lot, and appreciate you.
Yeah, man. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Bye, everyone. Come to 609 Social.